Welcome back to the Lap Podcast. I'm your host, Tristan Ryans. We are missing Khaki Kevin Walker today, although he does send his tearful sentiments following the Las Vegas Grand Prix. I am hosting your destination Formula One podcast here on the Lap Podcast. Once again, we're following this Las Vegas Grand Prix. We are heading into Qatar this upcoming weekend. But before we get things started, if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button. It helps support the channel. It costs you absolutely nothing at all. We're at the 87 subscriber mark here on YouTube. We are looking to get to the magical 100 by the end of this Formula One season. We're on episode 36 out of a regular 38 around every single Grand Prix weekend. So if you haven't joined already, please hit the subscribe button. And if you're a fan of the content, share us with your friends, put us in front of your coworkers that also enjoy Formula One. We're trying to build this TLP community. We're trying to interact with you guys. So feel free to leave a comment, like, share, all the good stuff. And we really, really do appreciate you watching the content. But without further ado, let's hop right into this thing. McLaren's disqualification changes everything about this season, about what we have in front of us. Man, oh man, this title has just found a new way to stay interesting. In case you're watching the podcast before having caught up with whatever the hell is going on in Formula One right now, in case you missed it, here's the recap. Following the Las Vegas Grand Prix, both McLarens, Oscar Piastri's and Lando Norris's vehicles, found in violation of the FIA's regulations on plank wear and were promptly disqualified, forfeiting a P2 for Lando Norris and a P4 for Oscar Piastri. This allowing Max Verstappen to not just tie Piastri for P2 in the World Drivers' Championship, but place him just 24 points behind Lando Norris for the World Drivers' Championship lead, leaving this thing smack dab right there on the table. It's anyone's game as we have 3 scoring opportunities left this Formula One season. So questions first. I'm sure you're asking, just how thin was the margin for disqualification for the papaya cars, right? 0.12 millimeters on Lando Norris's car, 0.26 on Oscar Piastri's. For reference, a human hair, one of these things, is 0.18 millimeters in width. So the breach of less than a hair's length for the McLaren of Lando Norris, just over a hair's length for Oscar Piastri, but a breach nonetheless, a breach that by the rules is a slam dunk. It is a overwearing of the plank underneath the vehicle. And if you're wondering why does this matter, what's the point of disqualifying your title contenders? What's the point of disqualifying your potential world champion? It's just the rules are the rules. In the words of a Zach Brown and Andrea Stella, if I'm not mistaken, the rules of racing, whether it's 0.01 millimeter, if it is a breach, it is a breach. If it's investigated and found to be in non-compliance, the FIA, as the rules are written, there is no margin for error here. This is a safety precaution on the part of the FIA, and they take these things very seriously. And if you're curious about if this has happened before, just look at what Ferrari did in China earlier this season with a double disqualification there between Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc. So, with that, can Max Verstappen, over these final 2 Grand Prix weekends, across a sprint, a race, and the final feature race in Abu Dhabi, win this title? Is it possible? Do we think that it's going to happen? Will it happen? Remains to be seen. But can he? Simply put, yes, he can. While trailing by just 24 points, this breach of the FIA rulebook is a bellwether for McLaren for these final 2 Grand Prix, who will now have to be extra careful on their ride heights for the remainder of this season to try to gather as many points as possible, remaining legal, leaving the front of the field very much so open for Max Verstappen and a Red Bull that, to this point in the year, behind the leadership of Lauren Mechis, behind the engineering that is there at Red Bull, behind everything that is going on at the Red Bull factory, with the new leadership of Lauren Mechis, by the way, whose whole initiative was to continue developing this car this year to understand exactly what they have on the development side, what they have on the engineering side back at the factory, has kept Max Verstappen very much so in play for this world championship. And honestly, the fact that this championship has reached this point is incredibly interesting. I mean, we've talked about there being, a two-way fight between Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri, while Max Verstappen kind of hung out in the background all year. But the fact that we have gotten to this point in the season with Max Verstappen still in play, with the championship not done and dusted, Oscar Piastri, the choke job is the choke job, right? He is now in a position to lose P2 in this championship based on the failings of not just himself, but now also of the team. You can make those what you will, but it's possible for Lando Norris to lose this thing too. And you'd have to imagine that for most drivers, this would light a fire under them. This would make them want it that much more. This would make them execute that much thinner on the lines, right? On the margins of pushing but not exceeding the limitations. McLaren pushing and exceeding the limitations in Vegas. Man, just from an excitement factor, I imagine the TLPs, are just as excited to see what the hell happens the remainder of this season. But for McLaren, it's high anxiety to claim not just the constructors, which they did a while ago, which is why they've stopped developing this 2025 car. They focused on 2026. They turned their attention. They left their drivers vulnerable. Unfortunately for McLaren, they have two fantastic drivers, but they are not the greatest of the generation, like a Max Verstappen. They are not one of the greats of all time, like Max Verstappen. With all due respect to what we've seen so far from Lando Norris and what we have seen so far from Oscar Piastri, they're going up against one of the greatest of all time, still driving at his peak. And the margins for error are razor thin, as we just found out in Las Vegas once again. But it's not going to be as simple as just winning it out for Max Verstappen. It is not going to be as simple as, Max just needs to win all the way, because he does need to do that. He does need to do that, but he still needs a little bit of help from the McLarens. Looking at a couple of pathways, starting here, Lando Norris at 390 points. If he just podiums with P2s the rest of the way, he still wins this championship by 9 points. Looking at if he gets third place, he still wins this championship by an so meager 2 points. This assuming, again, that Max Verstappen wins every single format that remains on the schedule. Qatar Sprint, Qatar's Grand Prix feature race, and then the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. And let's just say things get a little bit mixed up. Lando Norris has a P3, has a second place finish in the Grand Prix, but then in Abu Dhabi, things just kind of slip away. He ends up with 10 points. Max Verstappen can win on a tie. He'd have more feature race wins by the end of the season. This is the most chaotic option in my personal opinion. This right here is the pinnacle of madness. This is the unfortunate ending for Lando Norris's title push. This is the inevitable Max Verstappen taking it as a guy who just has more damn wins. But on a true win out, if Lando Norris does not meet the moment, these final three Grand Prix, maybe let's say he gets one more podium, but he just whiffs it, can't quite get there, Max Verstappen can still win this thing. Max Verstappen can still win this thing. And I have to ask you, the viewing audience, I want to know, how much faith do you have in the three of these? Because for record's sake, Oscar Piastri is in the exact same place as Max Verstappen on points. But I hate to say it, if Oscar Piastri cannot win in Qatar, he's done. He's in the same position as Max on points. And unfortunately, myself, and I'm sure many of you, have probably lost faith in him as a world champion in 2025 at this stage. Could he be a future world champion? The future is yet to be written. But this year, it slipped away from him, whether his fault, and in my opinion, largely his fault, or the fault of the team, a mix of both, But Piastri has allowed this thing to slip out of his grasp. I don't necessarily have the same faith that he's going to just reclaim that form and get a little bit lucky. I'm not as optimistic. And as far as Lando Norris, you have to question the faith, right? Who's the most consistent driver here in this mix? At the end of the day, you're going to look at Max Verstappen. A 24-point lead, a 24-point gap, and Lando Norris or Max Verstappen. At this rate, hate me if you want, but I'd call this a 50-50 because Max is going to drive the Red Bull into the ground trying to win out this season. McLaren seemed to be a little bit slower than the Red Bull since they've stopped the 2025 development and they turned their attention towards 2026. Car setups could very well be the title decider these final 2 weekends. And a massive blow to the title, if any of these 3 DNF, especially if it's Max or Oscar, this title's basically done. It's over. A 0-point weekend by Lando Norris, however, across either of these next 2 weekends would leave it all on the table in Abu Dhabi for either Max or Oscar to potentially reclaim, depending on the severity, depending on the performance, depending on the timing. Now, again, if Max can't get a win in Qatar as well, it might mean that he's also done in this title fight, barring a 0-point weekend for Lando Norris. But man, it's not going to be an easy path forward. Don't get it twisted. If Lando Norris finds the podium across these final 3 formats, all 3, he wins this title. Simply put, second or third to round it out, he's done. It's over. All he has to do is at least get P3 3 times. It's done. But if he misses the podium in a feature race in both, it's a lot more possible. And Max could just do Max things and win this thing out. So what's the most likely outcome? Look, McLaren are still really quick this year. Red Bull have seemingly pulled ahead. Mercedes have also remained a factor in these fights at the front, mind you. They could play the spoiler in all of this. But they're trying to lock up their P2. They're going to keep remaining a factor. So you can't count out Mercedes in any of these final 3 formats, respectfully, especially for the performances we've seen from their drivers of late. But, man, I can't predict this. Every time I try to predict it, every time I feel like I have some certainty, every time I feel like I know what's going to happen, we see the trends, we see where it's going, a new wrench gets thrown into this battle. The new wrench gets thrown into this fight. And I'm kind of pulling for Max to do it because of just how crazy this would be. I'm kind of hoping that this goes the way of Max Verstappen just because of how improbable this championship has looked at certain times this season, because of how the story, how the regulation itself, how this 4-year stretch could end. He's already won over half the races in this entire regulation, this entire 4-year stretch. He's already won over 50% of them. It's done. It's in the history books. Like I said, I think it's a 50-50. But if you're looking at the whole course of the regulation, I don't know, maybe that teeters one way or the other. I just couldn't tell you. I could not tell you. All I can tell you is, as a Formula One fan, as a Formula One talking head, if you want to give me that much grace, I just can't wait to see what's going to happen on these Sundays. I cannot wait to wake up and spoiler free, avoid the social media, run straight to watching these races. I cannot wait. I'm so excited, and I know you guys are excited too. What do you guys think is going to happen? Who wins this world title this season? TLPs, have McLaren botched it already? Is it over? Is this Max Verstappen's championship to lose at this stage? Can Max Verstappen win this championship? I want to hear what the TLPs think. I want to know what you guys think. I want to know what you think is going to happen across these final 2 Grand Prix Sundays. But there was also something else I wanted to highlight. Another byproduct of the McLaren double disqualification, Kimi Antonelli inheriting a P3 podium, grabbing back-to-back podiums after his P2 weekend in Brazil, this marking his 3rd podium of the season, currently sitting in 7th place in the Drivers' Championship with a shot at overtaking Lewis Hamilton for P6. The question, of course, is this Rookie of the Year debate over? Antonelli put on a show. He put on a show in Vegas. After starting down in 17th due to unlucky wet and wild qualifying sessions on Friday night in Nevada, where it never rains except when it has to. Antonelli tallied 12 overtakes on 48-lap old hard tires. He started on the softs, quickly ditched those for the hards and drove them the rest of the way for all 50 laps. Gaining pace basically the entire time, building out just enough of a gap over Charles Leclerc to mitigate a 5-second jump start penalty at the beginning of the Grand Prix, mind you. This was yet another peek into the potential that Kimi Antonelli has been showcasing since leaving European soil and what we saw early this season. I made a video a few weeks back on how Mercedes made the right call on this Italian rookie. Taking the ebbs and flows of the season in stride, Mercedes made the right call, and how it was appearing to come to fruition as Kimi adjusts to his F1 life. This result brings Mercedes roughly 3 points away from locking up second place in the Constructors for 2025, heading into a 2026 overhaul where the consensus in the paddock, at least so far, is that Mercedes have the power unit to beat to begin the next regulation. They've had their sights set on this next regulation for quite some time. And now, with all the craziness of what this 2027 driver market could look like, they've at least got themselves a guy that they feel incredibly confident with, that they feel like could be their future world champion. Now, I'm not going to try to get ahead of myself and thinking that he's going to be a world title contender as soon as next year. But with these kinds of performances as a rookie, the overtaking fest in Australia, the sprint pole in Miami, the podium in Canada, the near podium in Baku, P2 Fest in Brazil, and now another highlight in Vegas. It just shows what Mercedes and Toto Wolff believe they have had in this kid and what they saw from him in the lower levels, jumping F3 straight into an F2 car, matching up with Ali Behrman and taking him to task for the entire season. Grabbed a couple of wins as well in F2 among a very crowded, very talented pool, among a number of Formula One drivers currently on the grid in Franco Colapinto, his rookie contemporary, Gabriel Bortoleto, Ali Behrman, Isaac Hadjar, Paul Aaron, a reserve driver for Alpine this season. Look, a number of very, very, very competitive drivers, and he was still able to make his impression last year. I don't know. I think that as far as the rookie debate is over, after what we've seen, I understand there's a recency aspect to this. There was a rough stretch in Europe that was, at least in my opinion, mostly Mercedes' fault. But he had his fair share of the blame in this too. There were definitely moments where Antonelli made mistakes, as rookies do. But through it all, the kids dominated. The kids showed how vindicating the trust that Mercedes have put into him is. And what about the case for Isaac Hadjar in the V car? As strong as Hadjar has been this season, his peak, the podium in the Netherlands, I think it's become just not quite enough to outshine how many peaks Antonelli has had this year. And then Hadjar has been special. He's been exceeding expectations. He exceeded my expectations massively coming into the season. Watching what he was able to do in Formula 2, he was the runner-up behind Gabriel Bortoleto in Formula 2. A very rough ending to that season, mind you. Hadjar looked good, but there were concerns about attitude. There were concerns about temper that were emanating from Formula 2. We got little tastes of it throughout this season. But Hadjar has been special this year in his own right, too. And I believe he's done enough to earn himself a shot at the Red Bull seat in 2026 alongside Max Verstappen. But what he's done this year, with all due respect, I think has just been dwarfed by the work of Antonelli. Since returning from this summer break, Hadjar has made himself a very strong case. If it went that direction, I can't say that I would be floored. He's been very, very, very good. But I think what Antonelli's doing, meeting and beating expectations, for me at the very least, that makes him the rookie of the year. What about the rest of the rookies? Ali Behrman certainly has his own case after grabbing 5 point scoring weekends in a row for Haas, tallying a team record, mind you, including a signature P4 finish in Mexico to match a team best result historically. He's been incredibly consistent this year on Grand Prix Sundays, just a few mistakes. I've waxed poetic about Ali Behrman at other points this year. That was a video I put out within the last couple of weeks, actually. But unfortunately, it just hasn't quite been as peaky. There haven't been quite as high of peaks for Ali Behrman as there have been for Kimi Antonelli this season. Behrman, though, keep your eyes on him. he's got a really good shot to be in a Ferrari, I think, a lot sooner than people might expect. After all, he was part of that academy. They have him in the Haas driving a Ferrari power unit for a reason. Ollie Behrman's been very, very impressive. Conversation maybe for Gabriel Bortoleto, the Brazilian driver. He's had a really nice stretch at a certain point this season, but just not quite as impressionable in the machine that he's pushing in the Sauber. I think he's got a really bright future ahead. He's going to be arguably the face of what Audi are doing in Formula One for at least the next year to two. I think he's got a really bright future ahead, but 2025 has very much so looked like a rookie season for Gabriel Bortoleto, driving a car that a year ago was, bottom of the field. This year competing for P6, P7 at certain points of the season for P8, but not so much rookie of the year material. And as far as Franco Colapinto, with all due respect, it's just not quite there. Not quite up to snuff. He got the approval for 2026. Argentinian fans, absolutely let me hear it. And my criticisms of Franco Colapinto a couple of weeks ago, not trying to overstate that, but Franco Colapinto, with all due respect, and I think Formula One fans would agree that he is not quite the rookie of the year. He's had some really good drives against Pierre Gasly. He's had his moments. He's certainly looked a little more comfortable as the season's gone along, but nowhere close to what Kimi Antonelli has done this season. So, question for the TLPs. Who is your rookie of the year for 2025? Has Kimi Antonelli locked it up? Do you think Isaac Hadjar has a strong case? And what about outstanding Ollie Behrman? Let me know in the comments below. I want to know what the TLPs think because, honestly, you guys are what helped give this channel some life. I want to hear you guys. If you disagree with me, let me know down in the comments below. Keep it respectful, and maybe we'll talk about it on the next episode of this Lab podcast. But as we move forward, still a couple more things to cover. We got to talk about the Lusail International Circuit. We got track talk, 60 seconds, put them on the clock, proverbial clock. And I'm going to cover what is going on over in Qatar in 3, 2, 1. Let's hit it. 57 laps of action, 5.4 kilometers or 3.3 miles around this circuit. The lap record, 122.384 by Lando Norris last year. Qualifying record, 120.520 by Max Verstappen in 2024. Most wins, Max Verstappen with 2. DRS zones 1 down the main straight to turn 1. Built in 2004, was a GP circuit for a number of years, almost exclusively, but a number of different series have raced here. First winner, 2021, Lewis Hamilton in a Mercedes. Big moments. Max says F it following a controversial one-place grid penalty to drop behind George Russell after a very tense meeting with the stewards after qualifying. Verstappen charged forward past the Mercedes man and left no doubts. And weather this weekend, what can you expect after a very up and down weekend in Las Vegas? Well, unsurprisingly, in Qatar, it looks hot and dry. So I think I was able to accomplish that in a little less than 60 seconds. If you were timing me down in the comments, let me know how I did. Usually, Khaki Kevin Walker does this portion. He lets me know how high or low I did, how I graded out. But, of course, he's still sobbing. He's taking it really rough as to how Las Vegas ended, guys. He's a little broken up about it. But I want to move forward a little bit further. We do have to cover our P10 race predictions. This is where we stand. I had an incredibly rough. This is not quite this is not this is not the correct graphic. Don't worry about that. I had a rough going. All right, look, I picked Oscar Piastri to kind of be a little bit cheeky, to think that I was going to be funny, and it didn't quite work out. With a disqualification, I landed a net 0 points in P10 this week. So it was all gains for Khaki Kevin Walker in our championship. The margin is just 27 points for the final 2 Grand Prix weekends to go. Still technically a chance for Khaki Kevin Walker to take this TLP P10 prediction, the distance, honestly. But we're not trying to leave him, we're not trying to give it away, right? But as far as predictions for this weekend are concerned, P10 predictions, Khaki Kevin Walker did come through, and he did send in his predictions a little bit earlier in this week. P10 Isaac Hadjar for Khaki Kevin Walker. He thinks that if we're going to have a first DNF, he's going to go with Franco Colapinto. And to win this whole thing, the resident McLaren fan that he is, picking Max Verstappen of all people. going a little bit away from his boys, but he's trying to win. As P10 predictions for yours truly, though, your Tristan Ryan's hosting today. P10, give me Oliver Bearman in the Haas. DNFing, I got Carlos Sainz to DNF first this upcoming weekend in the feature race. And to win the whole shebang, I'm not going with either McLaren driver. I'm not going to go with Max Verstappen. I'm going to go with George Russell to play the spoiler once again. Predictions for P10 done and dusted. With that, I'm going to wrap this podcast up a little bit short. Usually these things hit about an hour, but circumstances are what they are. It's a quick Thanksgiving podcast for the TLPs to sit down and enjoy right before they sit down and carve out the Thanksgiving turkey with friends and family, and arguments abound about who's going to win this championship are tossed across the dinner table, but all in good fun, all in jest, and I'm sure you guys are, at least the stateside TLPs, are going to enjoy this nice little chunk of the holidays. So from the Tristan Ryan's household to yours, I hope that you have a wonderful Thanksgiving. From Kevin Walker, I'm sure he sends his best wishes along with us. But that's going to do it for this episode of the Lap Podcast. We both really want to thank you guys for watching and listening all the way until the end. If you haven't joined the rest of the TLPs yet, what are you doing? Subscribe to the channel. It costs absolutely nothing at all. Helps massively with the algorithm of all things. It puts us in front of more F1 fans like yourself. If you enjoy the videos, I know there's a hype feature with YouTube that helps put us, in front of more people. Toss us a little bit of hype. We'd certainly appreciate it. You can follow us on all the social medias down below. Those have been scrolling the whole time. We're on X. You can also find me on Threads, of all places. I believe my name on there is definitely Tristan. So you can certainly find me. I post F1 content on there pretty regularly. But with all that out of the way, once again, happy Thanksgiving to everybody here stateside, everybody who does celebrate internationally. And until next time, I am your host, Tristan Ryans. Be safe, be well, and let's go racing.